redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Thursday's edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I'm glad you could join us today. We've got an exciting show in front of us with a wonderful guest, Ashley Hayek. We'll be getting to her shortly, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Obviously, there's been a lot of breaking news with the Manhattan DA's case, Alvin Bragg, Michael Cohen, all this kind of nonsense that occurred that we want to get to and share as well. The case is going down the tubes really quickly, and it is a danger to our republic. So I do want to make sure that we talk about that, and we will talk about that. You are listening to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I am going to ask you guys to please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. We're also on YouTube, The Carl Jackson Show. We're on Rumble, The Carl Jackson Show, and wherever I am on social media, The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me there. All right, guys, stay tuned. We have some quick program messaging, and we will be back with our guests, and we will talk about some America First policies. You're going to love it. We'll be back. Okay, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I want to introduce my guest, Ashley Hayek. She is with the America First Policy Institute, which is a research arm of America First Policies, and also with America First Works, the action arm, which I really love that. So Ashley Hayek, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. Listen, Ashley, all right. So first off, I want you to tell people about yourself a little bit here. You're very, very impressive. I mean, you went to UC San Diego, if I recall correctly, started right off the bat, 22 years old, built a nonprofit, if I recall that correctly. I did some reading a little earlier here. So you're a very impressive lady, no doubt. You're a wife. You're a mother of 5. That's insane. You look great. All right. So wife and a mother of 5, a conservative firebrand, no doubt. So tell us a little bit about America First Policy Institute, America First Works, how you got started. Give us just a little bit of your bio, if you would.
Yeah, sure. Well, so as you mentioned, I'm from Central California. I grew up daughter of a farmer, and the opportunity to be serving, with the America First Policy Institute, having had the opportunity to work on the Donald J. Trump for President campaign in 2020 is really showing that the limits in this country are those that you place on yourself. And I'm the proud wife of a U.S. Marine, and I have 5 children, 4 girls, 1 boy. The boy's in the middle. We like to say he's surrounded by flowers. But, everything that we're doing today is really going to affect them and their children. And that's why it's so important that organizations like America First Policy Institute and America First Works exist. And AFPI was created by Brooke Rollins and Larry Kudlow, and it's really taking the best policies from the Trump administration and applying them into the states, and then looking forward of what those policies can be moving forward. Obviously, we have an uphill battle with a split Congress right now and Joe Biden in the White House. However, using oversight to our advantage, exposing the truth, exposing the swamp, that is something that the Trump administration did so well. And we have 9 former cabinet secretaries, a former secretary of state, 3 former NFL players, a civil rights activist, all brought together from the previous administration, and really looking forward as to how we put America first, especially in the most difficult times that we're facing today. Brooke Rollins, who's our president and CEO, she was with the Texas Public Policy Foundation for 20 years, and she recognizes that the power is really in the states. So even though there's so much trials and tribulations at the federal level, look at the great work that Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders is doing, Governor Kim Reynolds, Governor Kristi Noem, DeSantis. Look at what's happening with, Governor Abbott is standing up and doing a great work on school choice right now. So we have so much opportunity at the state level to implement policies that will save the country. And so that's really where America First Works, our C4 advocacy arm, is taking the policies and ideas that are being born in AFPI and applying them directly into the states.
Okay, so now, Ashley, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the obvious breaking news with the Manhattan DA and that total shabacle. I mean, I'm of the opinion that he should be prosecuted at this point, withholding Now I forget the
Exculpatory.
word. Exculpatory. Thank you. Exculpatory evidence from Donald Trump. Michael Cohen. Just testified to another lawyer with his former lawyer in private that, listen, the money came from a HELOC loan, which is the dumbest thing ever. The $130,000 came from a HELOC loan that he took out personally because he didn't want his wife to know. He didn't want Melania Trump to know. He didn't talk to Trump about this, as far as I could tell. So everything is starting to blow up in their face. And then last night, I'm not sure if you heard about this, there was this bombshell letter where he basically admitted the same thing. Like, there is no reason to go forward with this. And I'm really concerned beyond just the corrupt DA, the Soros DA in Manhattan. I mean, they were looking to arrest a president, a former president, and set a precedent over a silly non-issue virtually, which something that would amount to a non-disclosure agreement that Trump denied. Your reaction?
Well, I find it amazing that you actually want to talk about the merits of these charges, because I don't hear that at all in mainstream media. Because the bottom line is, legal scholars from both sides agree there are no merits to this case. It's 7 years old. State government cannot prosecute FEC charges, right? Like, this is absolutely ridiculous and everybody knows it. The problem that we're seeing, though, right now is this really isn't about just President Trump. This is about you. It's about me. Yep. It's about the 81-year-old Army veteran who went to the wrong protest and got 3 years of probation. It's about the father of 7, Catholic pro-life, who prayed outside of an abortion clinic and got drug out in front of his family. It's about the parents that are showing up to school board meetings and are being called domestic terrorists by the Department of Justice. It is a two-tiered, weaponized political system that's being weaponized by the government. And, say the wrong thing, go to the wrong protest, pray the wrong way, and they're coming for you, they're coming for me, they're coming for our kids. And they are making this abundantly clear. And I think the past 3 years have opened up our eyes so much to the real swamp that we are up against. And so if the silent majority stays silent, we're going to be in big, big trouble as a nation.
All right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely spot on. And just on even more so, if you will, on a macro level, if we don't have the rule of law in the United States of America, this is not a republic anymore. I mean, America is done. And I know there's a lot of liberals out there. You may hate Donald Trump's guts. That isn't the issue. I mean, the issue is imagine if a right-wing president were to get in office and act the same way. I mean, this is just scary. We have to have a rule of law to balance things out. And when you have corrupt DAs, when you have corrupt bureaucrats, when you have these bureaucratic agencies that have just run amok, you don't have the United States of America. We totally lose the rule of law. We become a banana republic. And I almost hate saying that, because I know a lot of people are like, whoa. But I'm like, no, seriously. You don't have a rule of law. This is, we have a banana republic. Okay, so here's what I would like to do, Ashley. I want to talk about policy, because I know there's been a lot in the media, Trump, DeSantis. I'll be honest with you. I'm like, okay, once you get to the debate stage, whatever. But at this point, I am concerned about what they've done to President Trump, what they could do to us. But also the policies going forward that I think is what everybody, including Trump, needs to be talking about, because I think he's a shoo-in for the nomination if we stick to talking about the policies, especially in lieu of how the Biden administration has just destroyed policies. But one thing you said that I want to touch on, specifically when it comes to elections, you use the word states. Thank God. It seemed to me that Republicans or state legislatures were caught off guard completely in 2020 when you had these Democrat funded attorneys going after, using the emergency powers in states to totally redo voting in America. And so a lot of our Republican legislators, honestly, were caught off guard. What is America first, or how do we address that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And remember, a lot of this was not even the legislatures reacting to what was happening, but governors unilaterally making decisions to change the voting rules. And that was wrong. But this was not something that I think just kind of came out of thin air. If you go back and look at 2016 in California, California is my home state. It's one of the most beautiful states, but I always say a lot of bad things are pretty much born in California. And in 2016, they passed motor vote, and that's when you automatically are registered to vote when you change something at the DMV. So think about it. California gives illegal immigrants driver's licenses. So they're automatically going to be registered to vote. If you're 16, you get a driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote. And do you think that they have a competent Secretary of State that's going to purge those people from the voter rolls? No, they're not. And so that's a huge problem. That was one issue. Number two, ballot harvesting, automatic mail ballots. All of that started in 2016 in California prior to the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, that was when everything was expedited. They were talking about ballot harvesting in Michigan in March of maybe it was like April, May of 2019. So it was already on their minds in terms of something that they wanted to do. But COVID gave, that's right. COVID gave them the absolute perfect opportunity to just mandate it. Now, here's the bottom line. There are some legislatures, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where we're not going to be able to change the law to secure our elections with the early vote or mail ballot or absentee or the ballot harvesting. But what we do have an opportunity is to, as conservatives, use those voting laws to our advantage, right? So we need to learn to play by the new rules. And Republicans and conservatives always get a bad rap because we're not willing to use the latest technology to our advantage. We're not willing to, take that next step. And in those states where we can't make sure that people aren't being mailed ballots, what we can do is to follow the new rules and to win. We have a winning message. In 2022, we saw that the number of Black American who voted conservative went up, suburban women. We saw Hispanic votes grow. So we know that we do have a winning message amongst all Americans. Now what we need to do is take that message and make sure we're counting the votes to make sure everybody is making sure their voice is heard in the election cycle. So really quickly, I'll give you an example in Pennsylvania. Prior to the election, John Fetterman had already banked through early vote or vote by mail over 950,000 votes. Dr. Oz only had, I want to say it was a couple 100,000. What I learned was that Republicans and Democrats will both return their ballot at 84%. Okay. It's the same number, but when Democrats are turning in 4 times more ballots or votes than Republicans are, then of course the numbers are going to go in their favor. So this is where, as conservatives, we have to step up and make sure that we're looking at that mechanism and that we're getting our votes in. And we're not, it's no longer election day, it's election season. So I feel really optimistic about it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm like, listen, as long as it's legal, we have to beat them at their game. And frankly, here, Ashley, I look at 2024 and I'm like, I'm sorry. At this point, it's a ballot game. I feel like whether it's Trump at the top of the ticket, whether it's someone else, I think it'll be Trump. But if it's, you know what I mean? It's a ballot game. If we don't beat the Democrats at their own game, we are going to lose. If I could just go back to focus on Pennsylvania real quick, I remember reading a column from the Federalist. I believe it was Avita Duffy. She recently got married. I think her last name is Alfonso now. But regardless, she was talking about what was happening, transpiring on college campuses leading up to 2022. The narrative was, okay, Republicans lost because they're pro-life and, and all this kind of nonsense. And she was like, no, what was happening on college campuses, to some extent, that's true, is Democrats were coming on the college campuses telling young women, you're not going to have abortion rights. You're going to, and the young men as well, Biden is going to pay off your student loans. And they were issuing ballots. They were collecting ballots. And she went to some college campuses and she was like, there were no Republicans there. Democrats were there just collecting those ballots on college campuses. no Republicans whatsoever. Your take?
Yeah, we have to meet people where they are, and we need to make sure that we're talking to all people. Like I said, we have a winning message. There is no doubt that conservatives lost young women in 2022. And so that's somewhere where we need to go back, because at the end of the day, if you look at the statistics, the number of people who want seventh, eighth, ninth term abortion, taxpayer funded on demand when a baby can feel pain is very small. It's very, very small. And so we need to start communicating these messages. The other thing that we saw too in 2022 was the ballot initiatives. When you put ballot initiatives that drive out a particular base or particular group of thinkers, then that's going to have an impact on your election as well. So paying attention to the ballot initiative process is going to be really important. You know, it's funny on the college campus piece in 2018, if you remember in California, when we lost a whole slew of House seats in California, one of my mentors was in the Orange County district. She has a college in her district. And I texted her on election night. I said, hey, congrats on your second term. I was really excited for her. She was up about 6,000 votes. 2 weeks later, she lost by 8,000 votes. That's a swing of 14,000 votes. Lord. And that was the ballots that were harvested on the campus in her district. And guess what? That seat is now reclaimed by a conservative member of Congress. Wow, cool. Because look what happened in 2022. California figured it out, right? They were able to figure out how to do the ballot harvesting, how to do the mail ballots. And so we picked up a lot of seats in California this time. So now it's time for the rest of the country to catch up. It's time to meet people where they are. You know, I know the TikTok social media platform is a huge point of contention, especially amongst conservatives. But if that's where the bulk of young people are, then we need to start putting our message on those platforms. So it's important.
Yeah, totally. And I'm not a fan of TikTok, honestly, but I agree that we need to go after the people while it's still up and running. Go after the people where they are, and that includes TikTok, at least for the time being. Okay, I want to make sure that we get through as many America First policies as possible, but first, I do have to give shout outs to my sponsors for this particular show, if you don't mind here, Ashley. I want to first talk about MyPillow. Mike Lindell at MyPillow obviously has built a fabulous company, American-made products. You're going to love it. All right. So just when you thought it couldn't get any better, Mike Lindell with MyPillow came out with the MyPillow 2.0, and it is actually better than the first one. I thought it was a mistake. I was like, Mike, don't mess it up. But he did it. It's wonderful. So when Mike invented MyPillow, it had everything you could ever want in a pillow. Now, nearly 20 years later, he discovered a new technology that makes it even better. The MyPillow 2.0 has the patented adjusted feel of the original MyPillow, but now it has this brand new fabric, this outer layer that makes it cooler, smoother, softer. You will absolutely love it. All you have to do for my listeners is go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener special at the top of the page, enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, and you will get the buy one, get one free. Ashley, I got to say, your hero husband deserves one. So mypillow.com, use the promo code Carl, or you can give them a call at 800-858-0263. 800-858-0263. And also keep this in mind, even the outer layer, the material is 100% made in the USA. You get a 10-year warranty, a 60-day money-back guarantee. MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener special, use my name, Carl, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. Okay. Going back to my guest, we are speaking with Ashley Hayek. She is with America First Works, and America First Policy Institute. So we are talking about specific policy that needs to be re-implemented as Trump heads back to the White House. And I'm not a DeSantis hater. I know there's some people, Carl, listen. Here's what I believe. Let me just say this. I want DeSantis on that stage if he decides to run. I want Vivek Ramaswamy on that stage if he decides to run. Obviously, I believe Trump has the inside lane, but I believe, as the Bible says, that iron sharpens iron. And I believe that if Trump is to be the nominee, I want some of the ideas that these other guys will bring to the table, and I want him to run forward with them. So I'm not mad at DeSantis. I hear a lot of people just going nuts, and I'm just not. I'm like, listen, policies are what matter. I believe Trump will be the nominee. We know that he has a backbone of steel. I want him to run with as many policies as possible. That's the way that I see it. This is one that I talked about last night when I sat in for Officer Tatum, Ashley, but you guys say here, and I'm looking at the your policy agenda at America First. Actually, it's agenda.americafirstpolicy.com. So again, agenda.americafirstpolicy.com. You can check out the policies for yourself. Put patients and doctors back in charge of healthcare. This is so essential. I don't understand. I get so frustrated that I don't hear Republicans talking about getting rid of Obamacare either. I mean, we don't have, and maybe it's because they have much better healthcare in Washington, D.C. But Ashley, I used to have a great healthcare plan. I'm self-employed that I paid for, and I got the best care. But and then when Obamacare got out, now I was younger and broker at the time. But when Obamacare came out, my premiums rose 400%. I had to get rid of my insurance because I couldn't afford it any longer, even though they said it would be cheaper for people like me. And I was subsidizing people. You know, I was talking to people that had great jobs, great careers. Oh, yeah, my premiums are cheaper. And I'm like, well, you're welcome. But I wasn't. I was paying more. And not only that, we have longer wait times. So we have death by queue, if you will, where we're waiting an average of 30 days longer to see our physicians as a result of that. You have pharmacy management companies that are making decisions as to what type of medicine you will get. You have these big hospital conglomerates that are now making the decision of which surgery you'll get and all this kind of stuff. Everything is run now by the administrators in Washington, D.C. and administrators in the hospitals, where doctors, the actual doctors, the people that actually know what they're doing, and the patients are actually no longer making the decisions. We should be talking about this.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. Number one, policies matter. Last summer, we debuted the America First agenda, and it's a 10-pillar policy plan to save the country. And one of those is our healthcare platform. And, you know, part of this is that conservatives just don't really, I think healthcare is a tough issue, right? And there's a lot of intricacies, and it's very difficult to talk about. And it's hard to sell. And it's easy on the left to say, oh, free healthcare, like free student loans, free everything. You get a car, you get healthcare, you get this. Without explaining how it's going to be paid for, like everything else in their agenda, right? And there's not really anything that's solution-based. And so when you look at what conservatives are trying to do in terms of communicate what the policies can be to improve our healthcare system, it gets a little bit in the weeds, and it's harder to follow, and it's not as sexy as some of the policies that, you know, the left tries to push. We have an incredible Center for Healthy America. Our chair is Bobby Jindal, the former governor of Louisiana.
Oh, I love him.
He's awesome. Yeah. Heidi Overton, she's a PhD MD, and she is our director, and she's also our chief policy officer for America First Policy Institute. She's brilliant, and she's really been pushing hospital price transparency so that patients know exactly what they're paying for. Same with, you know, prescription costs, all of that, to drive down the cost and make it completely transparent. You know, there's a situation in one of the examples she gives is in Virginia. One hospital is charging $1,000 more for a service than another hospital that's maybe 45, 50 miles away. So, you know, as a patient, you have the right to know what they're going to charge you, and you can maybe go to the cheaper hospital or the hospital that's offering a lower cost, and it might help, you know, drive down maybe some of those costs. But there needs to be a huge reform in our healthcare. Heidi was just in Ohio testifying on legislation. They're looking at passing it in Texas as well. We tried in Virginia. Unfortunately, we're not successful, but hopefully we'll get a second bite at the apple next legislative session. But there's a lot of different opportunities. As you mentioned, if you go on our website, you can see the policy plans. And then within each one of those pillars, like on this healthcare one, we have a number of model policies that we're giving to state legislators so they can pass it in the states. But really, that's what the conservative movement is all about, right? Taking power away from the elite, the establishment, the federal government, putting it back into the hands of the people and into the states. And so, the healthcare policy is one that we really need to drill down on. The other thing that comes up a lot of times too is Social Security, right? Democrats would love to paint Republicans as the ones that are going to eliminate Social Security, which is absolutely not the case. But what we do have is a major spending problem. And so how do we address that? And it's not by more spending, giving away more free services. It's about cutting waste and doing what's best for the American people.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Two things that I wish Republicans would focus on when it comes to this issue, a way that I think we can beat the left. I can tell you, as sadly, as everyone deals with this, as I have family members that aren't as fortunate, I'll say, financially, that will deal with the Obamacare system. And it really bothers me that no one says, hey, wait a minute, people can get sick any time of the year. Why do you have to wait? Why does the government get to tell you when you can purchase insurance, what insurance you can purchase? Like, for me, these seem like easy fixes and arguments that Republicans can hone on in. Like, listen, guys, make the left defend it. Listen, people get sick all year long. Why should you just be forced to have to buy insurance later in the year? Makes no sense to me. And then also, hey, if you want cheaper prices, even cheaper prices, we need to make sure these insurance companies are battling for your business, where they're forced to drive their prices down. It's these little things where I'm like, I think we can get some wins. And what I do love, I love the fact that you guys are talking about policies, though. This is absolutely important. It's just needed. I feel like the Republican Party lacks vision. So I'm so appreciative of people like you guys that exist. All right. So, Ashley, the borders. All right. Obviously, the border, everything that Trump did with the border, getting the numbers down of illegals crossing our border, it's absolutely insane now. We all know that. We won't go into detail, but we were only able to get about 30 miles worth of wall done. Obviously, that's not enough. What are we looking at, America First policy? What do we need to do to make sure we secure our border?
Yeah, and that's one of that's one of the pillars, is secure the border. The solutions that are being offered right now from this administration, and even I think I've heard a couple congressional members, is, they need more agents, or they need more people at the border. That's just so that they could process more people faster. They need to stop letting people across the border. We need the stay in Mexico policy. It's funny. We know what the policies are that work. We saw during the Trump administration, it stopped because there was stay in Mexico, that order. We saw, Title 42. We saw all of these things that made a lot of sense, that were sensical. But now the power has been given to the cartels. The cartels are running the border. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's human trafficking like no one's business. The one time I think we saw a reaction from the administration and from Democrat governors was when Governor DeSantis sent a bunch of illegal migrants up to New York, to Martha's Vineyard. That's when they decided to pay attention. But now, again, it feels like it's forgotten all over. It's a travesty. And the other issue that we're seeing right now is the fentanyl crisis. This administration has done absolutely nothing to stop the fentanyl coming in across our border. People are dying. Hundreds of people are dying from fentanyl, thousands. And it's a tragedy, and it's hitting every socioeconomic, every background across the country. And so we've got to get a hold of this. Chad Wolf, former acting secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, is our executive director. He's the chair of the center. He's on TV talking about this every single day, because we just need to reinstate the policies of the former administration, and we will have a secure border.
You know what? I read a headline somewhere. I think it was this morning. I can't remember where, but Representative Jim Banks said, if I recall correctly, he's literally been reaching out to the Biden administration to talk about the pressing issue of fentanyl coming across our border for months on end, and he cannot get a response from anybody from the Biden administration. Just sit and think about that. Over 100,000 Americans dying annually as a result of the border policies of the Biden administration. Just absolute crickets. Now, I know some of this was happening under Trump's administration too, but again, he was able to bring the border under control for the most part towards the latter part of his presidency. But it's absolutely insane that these people don't want anything to do with it. Another issue here, real quick. We'll just go through a couple of more. And again, I'm speaking to Ashley Hayek. And guys, you can check her out at where can people go to find you online, Ashley?
So our website, AmericaFirstPolicy.com, America First Works. Both of them have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then I'm just at Ashley Hayek. So,
all right, perfect. Okay, so now here's a really important issue: restore America's historic commitment to freedom, equality, and self-government. All this DEI crap, all this CRT crap, everything. The left is literally coming in and trying to revise our history. What do we do about that? I know DeSantis here. I'm in Florida. DeSantis has been tackling that hard out here. He's been doing a really good job at that. Obviously, whatever we can, I hate giving so much power to the federal government, honestly, but whatever we can do at the federal level needs to be done. How do we do this with America First policy?
So what we saw last year was several states across the country started banning racist CRT curriculum. And that was a big win, right? But then you have to enforce it. So we have a litigation arm at America First Policy, and we started sending demand letters to school boards that were not following the laws of the states, that were ignoring what the state legislature and the governors had signed into law to ban the curriculum from the schools. We've been looking at legislation to make sure that certain books that have explicit or vulgar information are not allowed in public school libraries or in school libraries. But you know what we learned last year was that was the tip of the iceberg. And once that was addressed, then what did we see next? Transgenderism. You know, in Florida, in Tallahassee, we heard about January, I believe it's January Little John, where the daughter was being secretly transitioned without the mother knowing. And, you know, this is a huge epidemic that we're seeing right now. The number of children that are identifying as transgender has doubled between 2017 and 2021. That's a major issue. And it's coming from the social media apps. It's coming from what they're being exposed to in school. It's a major problem. A lot of the legislation that we're looking at is actually in the states to ban, whether it's, you know, DEI, whether it's to ban CRT, whether it's, you know, the stopping the gender mutilation of our children. All of that is really being focused on the states. Florida's a leader in it. South Dakota's a leader in it. Iowa's a leader in it. And hopefully more governors will get on board to stop a lot of this. One more thing I wanted to point out about this, however, China. That there are Chinese programs from the CCP that are really focused in higher education, pushing communism. And we have to be aware of this. The CCP trying to purchase American land. That's a major problem.
Thank you.
And people are not talking about it. People are saying, oh, that's not happening here. It is 1,000% happening everywhere. Open your eyes, get off mainstream media and pay attention or we're going to lose our country.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, even here in Florida, I had a friend of mine bring to my attention that they had purchased some farmland here in Florida. And Governor DeSantis has started to fight back on this. But I'm like, man, we should be aware of this. Frankly, I don't feel like not just China, but obviously China is our adversary. Even though Biden doesn't seem to think so, but China is our adversary. I don't think any foreign nation should be able to buy land in the United States of America. Like, this makes no sense to me. I feel like we went from like being exceptional to one of the dumbest countries. I mean, this is just insane to me. Okay, obviously, the economy is a big issue. I do want to talk about that with you real quickly, but I do have to talk about another sponsor here. And I'd like to talk about another sponsor real quickly because I think you may want to invest. I'm talking about Birch Gold. So we all know that 2022 was the stock market's worst year since 2008. Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because Joe Biden is still in the White House. Inflation is hamstringing our economy and our savings. If you've been following the news, you know the Fed keeps raising interest rates because it's the only tool they have to keep inflation under control, and it's not working. They just raised the interest rates again, 0.25 point. just the other day. This administration is addicted to spending, and it's turning a blind eye on the ramifications. So don't wait until your savings lose more value than they have already. Hedge inflation by owning gold from Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold is the foremost authority on precious metals IRAs. All right. So they will help you convert an existing IRA or your 401k into an IRA in gold. And here's the best part. It is tax sheltered. So to learn more, all you have to do is text my name, Carl, CARL, to 989898, and you'll receive a free info kit on diversifying into gold with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied customers. You can trust Birch Gold to protect your savings with gold. Again, text Carl to 989898 to claim your free info kit on gold. Again, text Carl to 989898 and do it today. And I always recommend with this stuff, guys, speak to your financial advisor. Obviously, you don't want to get a buttload of your portfolio tied into one particular thing, especially with this administration in office. So make sure you speak to your financial advisor. But it's going to be safe, in my opinion, to have some tangible assets. All right. Gold is one of them. Birch Gold is doing a fantastic job. Check them out. Okay, Ashley, so Biden and the Democrats are absolutely destroying the economy. They're spending way too much money. But I do have to be fair and say, I think as Republicans, even under the Trump administration, we spent too much money. We've got to get the spending under control. What do America First policies look like going forward as far as our economy, getting our economy back on track?
Well, it's also a priority of spending, right? So what we saw last fall was the Build Back Better, the big government socialism bill that Biden was trying to push through Congress. And if you look at the spending in that bill, all of the Green New Deal-like spending that was wrapped into that. And so it's not like the spending are things that are priority projects. They're Nancy Pelosi pet projects, right? Fortunately, America First Policy Institute was able to lead a coalition to beat down some of the spending in that bill. We still ended up with a multi-trillion-dollar deal with what ended up coming out of that, including the funding of 87,000 IRS agents. But, at this point, we should be calling on the Senate to defund those IRS agents, as the House of Representatives voted to defund those 87,000 IRS agents who will target low and middle class working families more than any other group, is what we found. But, the other thing we just saw this past week was Joe Biden vetoed legislation that was bipartisan on ESG. And basically that legislation was saying if you have a pension fund that they would not be able to invest in woke causes or the ESG causes, that they had to invest in portfolios that would have a good return on your investment. Because here's the thing, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders. That's how this works. It's not what makes you feel good, it's what makes you money. And the fact that the Biden administration vetoed that, John Tester, Joe Manchin were both in support of that bill. I think this is a lot of where they stand. But again, it's this double standard of the political elite class and the American people. These are the same people that are taking private jets, flying to all over the country. Pete Buttigieg, 20 flights on private jets on the taxpayer dollar. So, we have a major spending problem. We want to see the tax cuts made permanent. That would be one huge thing that we can do to help our economy. We need to go back and look at our trade deals and make sure that those are sound. And that might actually put some more pressure on China, too. But there are a number of things that can be done from a prosperity angle. Unemployment is low, inflation is high. We need to bring manufacturing back to the United States. We need to open up the pipeline. That was the first thing he shut down, was those pipeline jobs. That's horrific. And now we're having to get our oil elsewhere. America first, America first, America first. That's the prosperity plan.
Talking about the pipelines just real quickly, my brother lost a very lucrative job. I mean, had an amazing job, and literally, almost overnight, he lost that job. He had started just to preparing. He was wiser than some of his co-workers. And perhaps it's because he pays, not as much attention to politics as I do, but I'm his brother. So I'm speaking in his ear and he's listening to stuff and trying to stay aware. But he started building a business on the side, car detailing business. And so he was better prepared than some of his coworkers, but it takes a lot of work to regain. It's 6-figure salaries like all day long. And so to try to rebuild that income, it takes some serious work to try to rebuild that income, but literally overnight. So I could speak to that. All right, just real quick here. Energy independence. So you kind of spoken to that. That's crucial, but also giving parents back control. You got these. And let me just say this. I so appreciate you mentioning that issue with ESG on the heels of the SVB bank freaking collapsing and the morons there doubling down on woke policies instead of taking care of the depositors like they should have been. So just you guys just think about this. This idiot in the White House. I hate to speak of a president that way, Ashley, but this guy's a complete idiot and he's corrupt. And he's not all there. But when he is there, he's still an idiot and he's still corrupt. So it's just frustrating that we've watched people and they nationalize the banks, essentially. They're still talking about doing more. So just drives me crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, the bank bailouts. The bank bailouts. Yes. That's crazy.
And there's crazy. Yeah, and they're still talking about doing more. Yeah. Janet Yellen talking about doing more, but she assures us that they're not nationalizing the banks. There's no attempts to do that as they make sure that all depositors are secure over $250,000. I'm like, good God, man, I can't believe this crap is making me so mad. Let me move on before I throw a hissy fit. All right, give parents more control over their education of their children. And then we'll close out with deliver peace through strength, because obviously foreign policy, you got to give Trump credit. Everybody was saying he would get us into World War III. Not so much, but it seems like we're pretty close now here, Ashley.
Yeah, so giving parents control over their children's education really is the bottom line, and that's allowing for education opportunity. And we're seeing school choice as the number one issue across the country right now, which is really, really important. COVID-19 did something really magical for parents, and it opened up our eyes. We saw what was being taught in the classroom. We saw the curriculum, and we realized that this may not be good for my kid to learn all of this woke nonsense and be indoctrinated. And so this is that we're really focused on making sure that parents have an opportunity to choose what's best. No one knows better than a parent or a guardian for their child, period. Yeah. The other thing that happened during COVID was we saw our education system get behind. Our children are behind. They are behind academically. Our test scores have dropped. It's a crisis. It really is a crisis. The only schools that continue to perform well, that maintained, we found were Catholic schools, private schools, because most of them were still in session and kids were still had the opportunity to learn. Being behind a screen, masked, isolated, that's not the best learning environment. But now the great thing about school choice is that you get to decide what is best, not just where you go to school, but a lot of the education savings accounts that we're seeing can be used for tutoring. It can be used for school supplies. And it's really giving parents an opportunity to give their kids the best resources to get caught up or to excel. You look at places like California, where they're eliminating higher performing classes. The advanced classes in the state for equity or whatever. That's a big problem. Why do you not want to allow children to pursue their greatest potential? So giving parents the resources that they need, maybe some of those parents in California can pursue an online option for their kids. That would be pretty awesome. So that's definitely one thing that we're working on. And the last one that you just mentioned, peace through strength. Today, America First Policy Institute is hosting a national security symposium at the Army Navy Club in Washington, D.C., talking about all of these issues, talking about China, talking about Russia, talking about Iran, talking about, our security crisis at our border. And so all of those issues are so important, making sure we have a strong national defense. making sure that we are America first, but we're not America alone, and making sure one of the greatest things that President Trump did was, hey, Germany, hey, counterparts, you have to step up too. You need to be a part of this conversation. You need to pay your fair share. And so those are all the conversations we'll continue to have and continue to highlight as we move forward. And transparency, by the way, transparency is so important, especially in dealing with Ukraine. We need to know where the money is going, and that it's not just being used to line the pockets of defense contractors in the Beltway. So all of this is really important, and it's definitely things that we're focusing on. We have 22 policy centers, and each one of those pillars that you just read, they're pulled 80% issues. 80% of Americans agree with those pillars. So
wow, that is important. That is really important, and that's why I think it's so important to talk policy, because you start, especially with this guy that's in the White House. There's such a contrast. So I'm like, good God, if we could get to talking about policy, compare and contrast, it's really hard for Democrats to be able to beat that. And I think that is the advantage that frankly, former President Trump has. The been there, done that. And again, I love Ron DeSantis, but it's hard to beat been there, done that. So if we talk policy, I think we can kick some booty as long and as well as get some great messaging going. Like, just one last thing, I consider messaging is huge to me. So I think of the term like tax cuts, and I'm like, can't we create like a keep more money in your pocket act or something? Like, use words that the left would use. So, because I think people think when they hear tax cuts, they just hear rich people getting, but I'm like, no, you work your blood, sweat, and tears. The Washington, D.C. elites don't have the right to tell you how much of your life, essentially, that they get to take away from you. And I'm like, I just wish Republicans would frame it differently so that the average man and woman connects. When they hear tax cuts, I'm like, just the message.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I just received an email that Chairman Hearn is going to be introducing a new bill called Work Not Woke Act. And it's pushing back on misguided DEI initiatives in the federal government. And so I do think that conservatives are getting a lot more savvy in the branding. And that's really important. One of the things that we're really focused on too is getting that messaging right is so important so that Americans can understand how it directly impacts your lives. So for so long, the conservative movement has been the group of pie charts and numbers, and it's really hard to feel a connection to something through an Excel sheet. But if we can connect the people and the stories to the policies and share them, more people, I think, will understand how it's directly impacting them. We have a project called the American Leadership Initiative, and we're drafting executive orders. So on day one of the next administration, whether it's a Donald Trump president or a Ron DeSantis or a Tim Scott or a Kristi Noem or whoever it may be, that they can go in on day one. They will have executive orders written. They will have a team vetted and ready to go. And that we can hit the ground running on day one of a new administration with policies that work for the American people.
Absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, Ashley Hayek, again, she is with the America First Policy Institute, also America First Works. We will make sure that we put their link in the description of the podcast today. Ashley, if you'll just stick with us for a minute to make sure we get this uploaded. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. We're at The Carl Jackson Show. We really would love to see you at YouTube and Rumble if you prefer. We're The Carl Jackson Show on those spaces as well. And again, obviously, everywhere you go to get your podcast, The Carl Jackson Show. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, Getter, True Social, wherever I am on social media. The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.